A mean green mother from outer space starts eating the residents of Skid Row. Special guest Courtney Noah joins us to discuss a so-called ironing machine, the most disturbing Wikipedia page ever, and the best song for a hero versus villain battle. We're having some fun now as we find out if Little Shop of Horrors stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of The Test of Time. I'm James Brief, and this is our 450th episode, our Valentine's Day episode. We've got a guest, but First let me introduce our director, my co-host, my buddy and pal, Alan Noah. How are you, Al?
Hi, I am doing great. I am very excited. Happy episode 450. Happy Valentine's Day to you, James, and to our very special guest, my beautiful wife, Courtney Noah.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
It is great to have you here. I love having you because, it's easy because we live in the same house and stuff.
That is true.
It's convenient. Yep. And we like having you on for Valentine's Day. This is a special Valentine's Day episode because it's 450. And when we hit, a 50 or 100, I like to do
milestones.
Yeah, I like to do something that's extra special. And I really did kind of want you to come on for Little Shop of Horrors because this is a movie that I know you love. When did you first encounter this movie? When did you first watch it?
So my memory is of seeing this in the movie theaters. So It was definitely kind of like a go out, spend some special time with the older sibling right after my brother was born. And so my mom had taken me to see this movie. I don't know if it's an appropriate movie for 6 or 7 year olds, but I loved it. We've taken our kids to see this musical. One of them was relatively young. So I think it's just such a fun musical. The inappropriate parts go over the kids' heads and the rest of it's pretty enjoyable and fun. So,
yeah.
And I think that's the sentimental part that has always stuck with me.
All right. And I feel like we've watched it many times together.
We have a shared love. Yes, I think. Yes. I don't know at what point we realized that we both love this so much, but randomly we'll put on the soundtrack when we need one of those pick-me-up moments.
Yes. I could listen to the soundtrack over and over and over again. And we watched the movie a couple nights ago and I have listened to it repeatedly since then.
Yes, and it hasn't left my head, so it's good and bad.
Yeah. But James, what's your background with this movie, with Little Shop of Horrors?
Well, I love that you asked it exactly that way. Sometimes we do this show remotely where you're at your house and around, and I'm in my house in New York City. And in the background, behind you, there is this Audrey 2. Can you explain what is this Audrey 2 that I've been seeing for years?
Sure. So this was a gift that you gave me, Courtney.
Yep, I got it actually in Nashville. I was coming back from a conference and, had some extra time at the airport, and there was this cool eclectic shop that had these prints in it. And as I started looking through it, I guess it was the illustrator who used to do the comics of the Muppets or Muppet Babies. It combines two of our favorite things, the Muppets, and then it also is representation of the Muppets actually being kind of picked up and wrapped by Audrey 2. So it was like, I have to get this. I don't know where we're going to put it. We'll find a place, but it just spoke to me, and I knew that Alan would love it.
Yes, and I do love it. It is right here behind me when I work. It's in my Zoom backgrounds for work calls and stuff. It's great. And there are a lot of connections between Little Shop of Horrors and the Muppets. Audrey 2 was a large, oversized puppet. One of the puppeteers, there were many, but one is Brian Henson. Also, this movie is directed by Frank Oz, famous for being the voice of Yoda, also famous for being the voice of Miss Piggy. So there's definitely a lot of overlap between the Muppets and Little Shop of Horrors. And I also maybe think the sensibility, especially more in the Muppet Show, the original from the 70s, which was kind of for adults and for kids, sort of depending on how you look at it.
But, it's interesting because you guys have this huge love of this film, and I've actually only seen this film once and now twice. I saw it years ago. I remembered liking it. I don't think this was a very rerun movie on HBO or something in the 90s. I don't feel like it was on a lot.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell our listeners what the movie's about, James?
Sure. The movie stars Rick Moranis as this man, Seymour Krelborn. He's a mild-mannered florist who works for this curmudgeon-y guy, Mr. Mushnick. And he also has a crush on his coworker, Audrey. One day, Seymour finds a strange, unusual plant, and when he puts it in the store window, it attracts customers. Seymour names the plant Audrey 2, and soon discovers that it needs blood to live. Seymour at first feeds the plant his own blood, but as Audrey 2 grows, so does its appetite. It talks to Seymour and tells him that he needs to eat a person, and Audrey's abusive dentist boyfriend is the perfect victim. Mr. Mushnick suspects Seymour of murder, so Audrey 2 eats him as well. The plant even tries to eat Audrey 1, and Seymour decides that the plant cannot be allowed to kill anymore. He fights and electrocutes the plant, and Seymour and Audrey live happily ever after, somewhere that's green.
Oh, you mispronounced that. It's somewhere that's green. That was a perfect opportunity to sing it.
This is a musical. The movie came out nearly 40 years ago on December 19th, 1986, and it had a $25 million budget. It opened at number 4 with $3.6 million. But the next week, week 2, it made over $5 million. And in week 3, it made over $4 million. And in the end, it made $38.7 million domestically. And so this film had legs.
And tentacles.
And tentacles, that's right. Musicals that are catchy tend to have these legs. We saw it this year with Wicked. Even movies that start out a little slow, like a movie like The Greatest Showman. It was a minor hit when it came out, and then it was just in the theater for weeks and weeks, and people just couldn't stop watching it. This film is based on not a Broadway musical, but an off-Broadway musical, and then I eventually became back on Broadway.
And the composer behind it is Alan Menken, who has done Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, all of the top Disney early hits. So I think that's also what, from the musical side, speaks to me. I love all of the music from those movies as well. And so clearly he's someone that I enjoy his music, and he just really hits the right note.
I see what you did. Well, it's Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. They're a team, and I believe they first got involved with Disney after this movie because they had worked on the off-Broadway show. They had written the songs and the book for that. And then this movie came out, was popular. Someone at Disney, I think it might have been Katzenberg actually, loved it, hired Ashman to work on The Little Mermaid, and then Ashman said, cool, great, I'd love to, but you got to bring my partner Alan Menken along too. So then they worked together on, I think it was those 3, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and then Howard Ashman passed away. And Alan Menken continued to do a lot of these scores. You're 100% right. You can feel that DNA specifically with Part of Your World, which is basically Somewhere That's Green.
Yeah.
It's like the same basic song. It's really the I Want song that you hear in a lot of Disney movies.
I have one tidbit about Alan Menken too. So I took piano lessons for 10 years. And when I took piano lessons, obviously those Disney hits were very popular. And my piano teacher, I think she must have gone to maybe music school with him. And so that was always her claim to fame, that she knew all this music that we're playing. I know him.
Wow. I was thinking about it, that should be our way to talk about the movie, is to go through the soundtrack song by song. Obviously, there are things that happen in between the songs, like the Bill Murray scene, which we'll definitely talk about. But I think that's a good way of breaking up the movie and talking about it. I think it works because not only is it a musical, and not only is it a great musical, but the songs are so entwined with the story. Sometimes there are musicals where there's just a lot of plot that happens and then everything kind of stops for a song. But in this movie, you need the songs. The songs are vitally important to the story. The movie's, I think, an hour and a half. The soundtrack is 38 minutes, something like that. The songs are the movie. You know, it is a huge, huge part of the movie.
And I think all the actors are singing. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right. The first track is Prologue, parentheses, Little Shop of Horrors. It starts with a little voiceover and doesn't really bother me all that much. The voiceover says the movie takes place in September, in the early part of a decade not long before our own. I'm such a nerd that I figured it out. I wanted to know when exactly the movie takes place, and you hear President Kennedy talking about the total eclipse. He was sworn in 61, killed in 63. And in the song Feed Me, Audrey 2 talks about getting a spot on Jack Parr, who hosted The Tonight Show up until March of 1962. So that puts this movie in September 1961. If anyone cares, there you go.
So this is what you spend your time doing?
Yes, this is correct.
Okay.
This is a good use of my time.
This is very important to you.
It is. You weren't at all curious about what year?
I mean, I knew it was when Kennedy was president. That was enough for me.
It introduces the sort of Greek chorus that exists in the movie. There's Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon, all named after these 1960s doo-wop groups. The Greek chorus, they are the thread that holds the movie together. These three singers, they walk you through everything. And I really like that they are these omnipresent, omniscient narrators that sometimes the other characters don't see and don't hear. And they're like right in the room with Seymour and he turns around and they're gone. Also, though,
they're the riffraff.
Yeah, Mushnick calls them urchins, like street urchins, and then they are there. They are people who live on Skid Row, and they interact with the other characters.
I think they interact with Audrey, too, right? Telling her, like, to, ditch her boyfriend.
Not Audrey 2, number 2, but Audrey T-O-O.
Audrey 1.
Right. And when Mushnick shoos them away from the front of his store, they are dressed in their street clothes. And then Skid Row starts, the next song, Skid Row, parentheses, Downtown. The woman who starts that song.
The woman walking down the alley?
Yeah. Like she's a famous singer. She had a long career in musicals. Mm-hmm. I really should know her name. But then it's one continuous shot from seeing the street urchins dressed in their street clothes to hearing this woman in the alley, and then it goes back to the chorus, and then they're in their gowns. You
would know better than me since you do all this timing research, but it had kind of like a thriller-esque feel to it, because they're kind of like, at one point I think the shot is from above and they're all kind of standing there in like what I would say is maybe like a zombie-like state, right? They're all coming up from their individuals, whether they're lying in the gutter or it just seemed very reminiscent. So I was wondering which may have influenced which.
I know exactly what you mean. Like there's a stomping of the feet that feels very thriller-esque. There's also the part where Seymour's like walking towards a fence, and then all of these people start.
Yeah, exactly.
They're climbing the fence. It's very zombie-like. Thriller comes out in 82, so that did come out first.
So maybe being that was so popular, they kind of pulled elements that would speak to people who are familiar with that kind of zombie-like feel.
And, it's funny that the song Skid Row, parentheses, Downtown, out of all of the songs on this soundtrack, is probably the least funny. There's not a lot of jokes in this song. It's not comedic. It's not making fun of the people who live and work in Skid Row. It's not punching down. In a musical where the songs are very funny, by and large, this one's just kind of talking about poverty in a fairly straightforward way.
Yeah, or class system, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so then the next song is Dadu, which is about how Seymour finds the plant. Last year, when we went to see the Total Eclipse of the Sun, obviously I was playing Total Eclipse of the Heart on loop, annoying the kids and you, I'm sure. But the other song that I was thinking about was Dadu, when they talk about the Total Eclipse of the Sun. Ding! Also, speaking of things that I look up when I have free time, he says that he bought the plant for $1.95, which in today's money would be about $20. $20 does seem like a lot that Seymour would be carrying around in his pocket to buy a plant, given how poor he is. It seems like Mushnik isn't paying him very well, to just kind of waste on a strange and unusual plant.
Yeah, but I think that's the only thing that he would be buying, right? His clothes are bad.
Right.
He's not really invested in other things. So it sounds like that's his little hobby.
This
True.
scene is a little bit outdated in that it has that 80s, like, things from the Far East are very exotic. And this scene very much is reminiscent of the scene in Gremlins, when if you're going to find a strange, magical creature, it's going to be in a downstairs basement shop in Chinatown with this man with the old white beard. But I actually think it's implied that the owner of this plant shop, he has no idea what he's selling, because I think the plant just appeared there out of nowhere. And he's like, yeah, sure, $2, sure.
I think so, yeah. Happy to take your money, but I have no idea what I'm selling you, kind of thing.
Sure.
Right. That part of town where he's walking by, that's a lot nicer than where Mushnik's plant shop is and where Audrey 1 lives. It's implied to still be downtown, but that part of town, more than any other place that you see, seems green and nice.
Well, you only see a limited part. It's just like the storefront, so that's all you're seeing.
Also, you pointed this out, Courtney, when we watched the movie the other night, when Seymour is telling the story to the first customer who comes in. That's Christopher Guest.
Yeah, which I would not have recognized if I hadn't looked up who's in the cast. And then I'm like, who's Christopher Guest in this?
Right. And it's funny because it's like, just by putting a strange and unusual plant in the window, that's not going to attract customers. And then instantly a customer walks in because of the strange and unusual plant.
And he has that very kind of like forced dialogue, right? Like where he's like, I will have to take $100 worth of roses then.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absurd for, the sake of like everything is going right once you put this Audrey 2 into your display window.
Right. All right. So then the next song is Grow For Me. This song is wonderful and amazing, and I love it. It still gets me when he says, "Oh God, how I missed you." And he's misting him. It's not M-I-S-S-E-D. It's mist.
Yeah, there's very clever words throughout this song, I would say.
Yes. And kind of like what I was saying before, it can be frustrating when the songs are just there and they're about the world that they live in, kind of like Skid Row, or about what a character is feeling, kind of like Somewhere That's Green. But some of these songs do advance the plot, and this is one of them. Grow For Me is when Seymour discovers that the plant needs blood. And that's hard to pull off, is having the songs advance the plot, and especially to do it in a catchy song and a funny song and all of that. Like, this song checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I guess it's not quite the song. It's when they're interacting and he realizes that the plant wants blood, and it just has a little, like, sucky face. It's like the...
Right.
And he's like, what are you doing?
Right. And it's a sound that babies make when they're hungry.
Well, he's imitating Seymour, who is sucking the blood from his finger.
Right. When Seymour's trying to give Audrey 2 the blood, and you see it reaching its mouth
straining,
open.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of turns its nose up at him when he decides that he doesn't want it. There's a lot of subtle movements that the plant does that make it feel
alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
like it has personality even before it starts speaking. Levi Stubbs, when he starts doing the voice, he infuses a ton of personality to Audrey 2, of course, but you see it even before that, just from the puppeteering. The next cameo in the movie is John Candy, who plays Weird Wild Wilkinson, the radio host. It's a very small role, and apparently Frank Oz was going to give John Candy some bigger role in the movie, and John Candy didn't want to. He just kind of wanted to do something small, just do one scene. And he brings a lot to the character. He's only on screen for a minute or two, but, it's great seeing John Candy in this movie.
I think it's a perfect fit, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
I guess, well, I don't know what the other scenario would look like, but I think everyone has the right amount of cameo in the movie to, like, add their little flavor to it.
That's fair. So now let's go to Somewhere That's Green. This is Audrey's big ballad, played by Ellen Greene. She was in the off-Broadway show, and they brought her back for the movie. There was talk about Cyndi Lauper and some other people, but Ellen Greene kills it in this song.
She's amazing. Because we saw the off-Broadway show a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I think what struck me is the way that Ellen Greene plays this. And I don't know what's the official way, although I would think like the official way would be the off-Broadway show. Audrey 1 seemed kind of like an alcoholic. She seemed a little bit like she wasn't steady on her feet, versus Ellen Greene really like portrays Audrey 1 as super innocent.
Yeah.
Obviously the song has a lot of innocence about it, but seeing the off-Broadway versus the movie, I was like, what is she doing to Audrey 1? Like, why are you acting like that? She's just a victim of her circumstances. There's nothing more to it.
Right. And there are a lot of differences between the off-Broadway show and the movie, but I think the movie does try to make her, and honestly Seymour too, to be more sympathetic characters. To your point, they're victims. You feel bad for them. In the musical, you feel a little less sympathy for them. Also, that kind of helps in the show, because in the show, they die. So it's kind of okay that you feel a little bit less bad for them.
Yeah, they just have a different angle to them, I think.
Right. But Somewhere That's Green is so funny and tragic because she is pining for a washer and a dryer and an ironing machine. Also, who calls an ironing machine?
Yeah. It's like, we need an extra word in this song, so let's say ironing machine.
Maybe that's what they called them back in the 60s. I don't know. But what she wants is just a very boring lifestyle in the suburbs. But as this woman living in poverty in the city in Skid Row, what could be better than TV dinners and plastic on the furniture to keep them neat and clean?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a very stark contrast even to, how she dresses in
Right.
Skid Row, and very provocatively, versus her Donna Reed attire in her vision of Somewhere That's Green.
Yeah. It's also tragic because everything that Seymour does in this movie is to get the affection of Audrey, and he thinks he has to win it. And that's what, Audrey too is telling him. He has to do murder and kill people and feed him bodies. But no, she loves Seymour right away. And she always loves Seymour. So he doesn't really need to do these things for Audrey to like him.
Just based on the fact that I haven't seen this film much, and most of these songs are very upbeat, 60s doo-wop, and there's some a lot of drums. This song was probably the most boring to me. It's just slow. I think it slows down a lot. And I think musicals are supposed to have that. It's a very nice song that she sings, but a little less fun for me. Sorry, guys.
James, how could you?
It's blasphemous, but I get your point.
Let me make it clear. This is not the Cheer Up Charlie of this musical. By that, I mean from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that song that just, you need to fast forward if you have a VHS.
Just brings you down.
Right.
Maybe if I heard it 17 times like you guys have, I'd like it
Maybe
more.
more than 17 times.
Yeah. For what it's worth, we know all of the words to every song.
Yeah.
But the plant shop is doing well. Seymour is anemic, I guess, because he's giving all of his blood to the plant. He's forgetting things. He forgets about the funeral arrangement for Mrs. Shiva, which, as a Jew, I thought that was funny because, the Shivas are apparently all dying, and so they're a big customer for the plant shop. And, when Jewish people die, they sit Shiva. Apparently, that's a reference to the 1960 movie, which I read on Wikipedia has a lot of Jewish humor. I know it's a Roger Corman movie, and I've never seen that movie. I did watch the scene with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yeah, I heard he was in it.
Yeah, he basically plays like the Bill Murray character.
Okay.
And it's, I think, Jack Nicholson's first or second or third movie or something like that. And it's cute seeing a very young Jack Nicholson enjoy being drilled. From what I've heard, it's not worth it to see the rest of the movie. But you can find that clip on YouTube if you're so inclined, looking for 3 minutes to kill. The next song is Some Fun Now. I didn't really have any notes on that one. Did you? No?
Nah.
All right. The song after that is Dentist! Exclamation point. Dentist! I always forget that the dentist character has a name, Orville or whatever. I'm not going to call him by his name. His name is the dentist. And this song is hilarious. It's amazing. Steve Martin does a killer job with it. It's funny because we watched this movie a couple nights ago, and then yesterday we had our family dentist appointment. And of course, our dentist is lovely and not a torturer.
Not addicted to laughing gas.
Right. As far as we know, I think that's a safe bet. But this song is just also filled with, wordplay, leader of the plaque. Watch him suck up that gas. Oh my God. It's so funny.
It's a great character. All of his nitrous contraptions. He has a vest of nitrous. He has these little, he has a little canister, ready to go to just shove a little nitrous up his nose. He's so funny.
I think also just his physical comedy in the role. You watch him, I mean, obviously the shot going through the office, but even when he gets off the motorcycle, just his whole body language personifies this insane dentist. Sadist dentist, right?
Yeah. And actually, speaking of that word, there is a line in the song, Who Wants Their Teeth Done by Marquis de Sade. I didn't get that. Do you know who Marquis de Sade is?
No, but I know the line.
Okay. James, do you know who this guy was?
French guy?
Yeah, I looked him up, and he is where the word sadism comes from. He was that sadistic. He did all of these horrible, horrible things. If you don't know, don't look it up because it's a very, very disturbing Wikipedia page. But then I also appreciate that line more. Now it feels more clever. We can talk about the Bill Murray cameo too, which is apparently largely improvised. He just kind of made it up. Jack Nicholson did the character before, so the joke was the joke, but he made up the dialogue and the screaming and the, oh, candy bar, candy bar.
It's classic Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill Murray is going to the dentist.
It's so damn funny. Also, I'm sure this is true for you too, watching this movie as a kid, the real joke of this scene went way over my head. Meaning that he is a masochist who enjoys the pain caused by the sadist. And yeah, I mean, it's a very sexual scene. As a kid, I maybe even asked my mom or my dad, is it funny because he likes getting hurt? And probably they were
sure,
like,
yeah,
that's it. Cool. And don't ask any follow-up questions. And that's the point where the dentist gets mad, is when Bill Murray's grabbing his arm and getting really, really into it, where he kicks him out, where it's okay, this isn't fun for him if, it's fun for the other guy. And that leads into the next song, Feed Me, parentheses, Get It, where Seymour discovers that Audrey can talk. Audrey, too, asks for blood. Again, this is a song that advances the plot. This is where the plant convinces him to commit murder. Seymour doesn't kill the dentist. He ultimately just lets him die. But he does make that turn because of what happens in this song. Before this, we know that the dentist is abusing Audrey 1, but here we see it where he gets mad at her for falling off the motorcycle and then he smacks her. He's a terrible character.
Yeah, just shows his cruelty.
Exactly. So you do sort of understand Audrey 2's rationale when he says that he deserves to die. You're like, okay, I guess. If there's anyone in this movie who deserves to die, it's the fucking dentist.
But he doesn't really die at Seymour's hands, though. He kind of knocks himself out with the nitrous and then overdoses, essentially. So he gets away with it. He doesn't have to kill anyone yet.
And I'm pretty sure in the musical, it is more direct that Seymour still doesn't kill him, but he has way more opportunity to help him. I think,
yeah.
The dentist pleads for his life, right?
Yes. It makes it clear, he could save him.
Right. Whereas in the movie, he kind of just dies pretty damn fast. One other thing about the song, though, there's a real contrast in the styles where Seymour is singing kind of a ballad. It's more in line with the 60s doo-wop style of, I don't know. And Audrey 2 is kind of rapping in a way. It's a much more fast-paced song about, how about a shot on Jack Parr, a date with Hedy Lamarr? It's a much more frantic style. So there's a contrast between not just their points of view, but also the music itself. Mm-hmm. Then we have Suddenly Seymour, which is, by the way, the shirt that you're wearing right now that you got from the Off-Broadway show.
Yes.
This is your favorite song?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. I mean,
it's the one I find myself probably singing the most, yeah.
It's a great karaoke duet.
It is. Although I don't know if we've ever done it. Have we?
I feel like we must have once at one of your karaoke birthday parties.
Maybe.
It's a beautiful song.
It's when they discover their love, right?
Right. And they both had loved each other before, but they don't know it until this song. And I think it's also kind of pure just in terms of the lyrics. So much of it is about you don't need makeup. You're beautiful just the way you are.
Yeah, accepting each other for who they are. Yeah, it's both ways, right?
Right. I think it's in Somewhere That's Green where she says that Seymour's a cutie. Well, at least he's got inner beauty. So she knows he's Rick Moranis, but she still likes him anyway. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful, pure ballad. I love it.
It is good, and it's got the Greek chorus on the end as well. I think every song that the Greek chorus is in is better for them being in it.
Fair. Also, right before the song, she does mention where she met the dentist. The gutter.
Oh, right. Yes. And you think it's like they refer to the street like the gutter, but it's actually a place called the gutter.
Right, like a nightclub or whatever. But yeah, the way she says, the gutter, is amazing. And she does kind of have that high-pitched voice in real life. It's exaggerated in the movie, but she was on Heroes. You remember, the first season of Heroes? And she does kind of have a naturally high-pitched voice.
Yeah, then we get to the song Supper Time. Mushkin, he thinks that Seymour has murdered the dentist, but in reality he didn't. He says, I'm not going to turn you into the police, only if you leave town and never come back and you tell me exactly how to feed this plant that's making my business go great. And he finds a way to exploit Seymour and get him out of here and get the great plant for himself. But I would call Seymour culpable here because there's a huge man-eating plant behind him with tentacles opening his mouth. He could say, dude, there's a man-eating plant behind you. You might not want to stand there. Yeah,
but I think despite all of it, like I never think of Seymour as like having any bad qualities. Like I think even in that song, I'm like, Mushnick's kind of a jerk. Like he didn't really take care of Seymour that well. He's always like super rude to him. I mean, whether or not you should be killed for that.
I mean, he's eaten a lot.
He's more than super rude. He's abusive. We see Audrey be abused by the dentist. Also, Seymour is abused by Mushnick. He says that he took him in and gave him a crust of bread and a bed. It's not a fucking bed. That's a cot in the basement. He gets every other Sunday off. I mean, he's basically an indentured servant to this guy. And Mushnick, he's got a gun on him. He's saying, we're going to the police. And he's holding Seymour at gunpoint. So you don't really feel that bad that Seymour allows Audrey to eat him. In the musical, Seymour basically kills Mushnick. I think he tells him that he put all of the receipts or all of the money inside the plant. And so Mushnick like crawls in looking for the money. Yeah. And then Audrey too kills him. And there's also a whole thing where Mushnick wants to adopt Seymour. There's a song, Mushnick and Son. I remember when we saw the show, I was like, I don't know this song at all because it's not in the movie. And it kind of plays up the paternal father-son relationship and then, makes Seymour more of a bad guy because he kills this
Another reason the show is a little bit like, oh, they're changing these, like, characters that I grew up with.
Yes. And that leads us right into the next song, The Meek Shall Inherit, which is a lot longer in the show. I believe even on the soundtrack album, it's longer. Frank Oz cut it way down for the movie, but it has more of Seymour wrestling with what to do now that two people are dead. He's getting more of these deals and these contract offers. And in the longer version of the song, he says, no, I've got to stop that plant. I'm going to kill the plant. It can't be allowed to continue. But what about Audrey? She won't love me. Damn it. I will keep doing whatever the plant says in order to keep Audrey. So it is really in that part of the song that's cut from the movie where he really does make the deal with the devil, where he fully commits to selling his soul for the love of this woman which again is tragic because she loved him anyway.
Yep. Again, the Little Mermaid theme, kind of, right?
Exactly. Audrey, too, is also very Ursula-like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With the tentacles and the promise of the great love that you don't need Ursula, you don't need Audrey, too.
Yeah.
Then we get to the song that was nominated for the Academy Award, which I find interesting because I think this is a really cool song, but I don't think it's their strongest song. I don't think it's the one that would be meant to win.
This was the only Oscar-eligible song
Why is
in
that?
the movie. Because all of the other songs were written for the off-Broadway show.
Oh, best original song.
So
Got
this
it.
is an original
Okay.
song for the movie. It's the only original song for the movie.
Got it.
And therefore, it is the only one
Okay.
that was Oscar-eligible. You can find on YouTube the video of Levi Stubbs performing the song at the Oscar ceremony. It's great. There's like a big plant behind him. He's wearing this loud purple suit. And it's only part of the song that he does because there's profanity in the song. This was the first Oscar-nominated song to ever include bad words.
Did you see who it was nominated against, though? It lost to Take My Breath Away from Top Gun, which is a
Right.
classic 80s song. But I actually would have given it to a different film that was nominated against. And actually, it is the I Wish song of that one. And that was Somewhere Out There from An American Tale. James Horner
right.
did that one.
Related to that, Alan Menken, when I was looking up his bio, he actually has the sought-after EGOT. He's, obviously worked in film, theater, and then, all of his musical awards.
Yeah, and I read something that because this was the only song that was eligible for an Oscar nomination, and because it lost, he made sure that for, I think it was The Little Mermaid, or definitely like future projects, he wrote everything original for the movie so that he would have options for songs that would be Oscar eligible. He did want that.
He covered
Oscar.
his bases.
Yeah. He definitely wanted it. I remember loving this song as a kid because of the curses. I think Audrey, too, says tough titty before, but this is the first time he sings it. And then he says, keep the thing, keep the it, keep the creature. They don't mean shit. And then, as a kid, it's like, ooh, the plant said shit. Ha 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 ha. It's funny. And for a good guy, bad guy showdown, it's the perfect soundtrack. I mean, like, name a better song from a hero versus villain showdown in any movie ever. There's not, right? No, this is
You
it.
two are definitely way too close to this film, I have to say. There's never been a greater musical ever than this.
Then name a better one. Prove me wrong.
What is your
Prove me wrong,
specific
James.
question of the better?
A better song for a hero versus villain showdown.
I'll have to think about it, but I do think there probably is a better villain versus probably even, I'd say, some of those Disney films, maybe. You probably got some of the Menken ones. I don't know. What is a villain versus hero song?
Yeah, can't name one.
Okay, Confrontation, Les Mis is better in my opinion.
Lame.
That's Javert versus Jean Valjean, okay?
That's a pretty good one. Yeah.
Lame.
Okay, maybe hero versus villain. We'll take that out of the. But I think I would struggle to think of a musical, like a movie version of a musical that compares with Little Shop of Horrors. I think they always tend to miss the mark a little bit. I mean, the one maybe that comes close, Hairspray, which I had actually just saw for the first time, like within the past year. I'm like, that was pretty good. But I think Little Shop of Horrors is the best based on a musical movie.
How about Wicked?
It's a close second. Little Shop of Horrors is so well done. And maybe it's the Muppet element of it in there that just brings it all together.
Right. All right. Well, we should now talk about this movie's ending. Because after Mean Green Mother from Outer Space, Seymour kills Audrey 2, and then he and Audrey 1 go off and live happily ever after somewhere that's green. But it's a very, very different ending than what was originally shot and what happens in the musical.
So basically, Audrey and Seymour die. They get killed by the plant, and then the plant takes over the world.
Right. Everything's the same up until the point where Seymour runs in and sees Audrey 1 half in Audrey 2's mouth. In the movie that we have seen a million times, he pulls her out and she's fine, and then Seymour decides to kill the plant. But in the original movie, he pulls her out and she's mortally wounded, which makes sense. You see the inside of this plant's mouth repeatedly in the movie. It has a ton of sharp teeth. And when you think about it, yeah, if she was in that mouth, she's gonna die. It makes sense within the context of the movie. And also just plot-wise, Seymour makes a deal with the devil. You pay the price when you make a deal with the devil, just narratively. And the story goes that when Frank Oz was first making this movie, he was talking to David Geffen of the Geffen Company, who greenlit the movie and gave the movie to Frank Oz. And David Geffen said, "You can't kill your two main characters." And Frank Oz said, "Yes, we can. We have to." And Geffen was like, "Okay, you know what? Go for it." The ending of the movie was shot. It was made. It was really, really expensive. You mentioned before, James, this movie had a $25 million budget. That was the highest budget for Warner Brothers ever at that time. Aliens was being made on the next lot over. That had a lower budget, which is kind of mind-blowing. They spent so much money on the finale where these huge giant plants take over the world. And then there were test screenings, and the audiences hated the ending.
Well, in a way, I feel like it changes the whole tone of the movie, having seen both, because I think if you have like I don't know, what is the director's cut or whatever, you can see both. It makes it feel like an alien movie. And I don't think A Little Shop of Horrors actually as, like, I know Audrey is like technically an alien, but you don't feel like that unless you see that alternate ending, in which case, like, oh, the alien came and invaded and took over, right?
Yeah. It's a tragic ending. It's also long. You can find that online too. It's, I think, like maybe 12 minutes or so of these giant Audrey 2s taking over houses and New York City. There's a great shot where a huge one opens his mouth and a train goes right into it. And then like it swallows the whole train. And then the other Audrey 2s laugh. The movie ends with the Audrey 2s on the Statue of Liberty taking over the world. And it says "the end," question mark, exclamation point, question mark. And then it crashes through the screen. So it's a very different ending. Frank Oz's rationale for why it worked in the stage musical, because in the stage musical that's what happens. Seymour dies, Audrey dies, and they take over. But then in the show, there's a curtain call.
Yeah.
And the actors come out and you see them and they wave to the audience.
And you know what happens during the curtain call, too. Do you remember what happens?
They come out into the audience, right?
I don't know if it was out into the audience, but like Audrey 2 opens up and like all the ping pong balls or whatever come out. So it was like kind of like it brought it back to like a fun moment where everyone's like, oh, it's funny. It's like shooting things out at the audience.
It's a different
after they
thing.
Just died.
Sure. It's more because you see them come back out for the curtain call. That's Frank Oz's theory, that it makes it okay on stage. In a movie, when they die, yes, you know that they're actors and that Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene are fine, but it just hits different.
The theater ending that we got, it was a smarter ending to make, I think, for the general public in 1986. Yeah. I think it was the right way to go.
Frank Oz says that, yeah, he thinks that the sad ending is better and more true to the story, but he also doesn't hold any ill will because the test scores were so low that I think they're supposed to be a 55%, and they were 13%, and then he insisted that they do another one, and then it was 16%. It was way too low. Like, the movie wouldn't have been released without it. But Courtney, let me ask you, as our very special guest, what do you think about Little Shop of Horrors? Let's go with the theatrical movie, not the alternate ending or any other version. Do you think it stands the test of time?
We're all
I think
curious.
This is obvious. Yes, I mean, that's a little bit why I hesitated, I think, to do this movie, because I was like, is there really a question here?
Sure.
Of course it does. We continue, like I said, to listen to the music. I think we saw the movie before we went to see the off-Broadway show with our kids, so you love the characters, you love the storyline, and it's just a feel-good movie, no matter what time. It stands the test of time.
Oh, I like that. Okay. James, what do you think? Does the movie stand the test of time?
Yes, this movie stands the test of time. Is it the greatest film I've ever seen, the greatest music of all time, and the greatest soundtrack of all time in every single way? No, I do not think so.
You were wrong.
I know, blasphemy for you.
Sorry, just letting you know.
In the same way, Al, that you are way too detached from Star Trek, that you've automatically said no to every single Star Trek before you see it, I think that you are way too attached to this film. I feel like to you guys, there's no way to rank the films because they're all the greatest songs of all time equally. My favorite is the opening. I just think it's such a good, catchy tune. That tune I remembered for 30 years. That was the only one I remembered. I'd seen it once in the 80s, and then I remembered it now. So just such a good tune. I love that one. Rick Moranis is always great. Every single person in this film is very good. I would say that Audrey won. I'm less interested in her than I think I should be. I don't say that she's a bad character. I don't think she's as fleshed out. I think she's a little bit of a damsel in distress, but I just feel like the character Audrey 1 is probably less interesting than she is in the musical. Only hearing from what you guys said here.
So I just heard you hated Audrey 1. That's what I took away from your comment.
Yeah, you
hated her song. You hated her character.
Hated everything about her. No, she should have written it out. And Audrey 2 they never should have explained why she's Audrey 2. No, the whole musical is very nice. This is a great musical. Am I going to see it 17 more times in 17 different versions? No. But yes, a very nice movie. It stands the test of time. Please don't hurt me because I say it's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. Al, let's hear you. I'm so curious if you think this movie stands the test of time because your wife's going to kill you if you don't say it's the greatest film of all time.
Yes, the movie stands the test of time. Yes, I am going to feed you to a plant, James, for not being more effusive in your praise. This movie checks a lot of boxes for me. I love Rick Moranis. I love Bill Murray. I love Steve Martin. I love funny songs. It just has like all of the things that I love. I believe this is the only movie where Bill Murray and Steve Martin have a scene together, which is awful that they only have one scene together. Rick Moranis and Steve Martin together are a joy and a delight to behold. I know everyone thinks of Steve Martin and Martin Short now, especially because of Only Murders in the Building, but Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, I mean, they're only in one or two scenes together in this movie, but they're amazing. I think they only have one or two scenes together in Parenthood. Of course, I love and adore My Blue Heaven. I love everything about this movie. I do think that the sad ending does make more sense, but I love the movie as it is with the happy ending. It's fine.
And it's kind of saying a lot, too, because I don't know if listeners know, but you're not really a musical guy. I feel like you've become more tolerant of them, knowing that I really enjoy Broadway and musicals, but like it takes a lot for a musical to really hit you in a way that you're like, that was really good.
I think that's fair. I enjoy a lot of musicals. I enjoy going to see Broadway shows with you. I really did like the movie Wicked, but yeah, usually I'm not this effusive in my praise about musicals. Honestly, the other movie musicals that I absolutely adore are the Muppet movies. Those are amazing, wonderful, fantastic movies that I love, 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 and can listen to the soundtracks over and over again. This is probably my all-time favorite musical because, of course, it is. Levi Stubbs is so wonderful in this movie. I'm curious if either of you know the other voice acting he did. You probably don't, Courtney. You might, James. Do you know the other role he did where he was a voice actor?
So Levi is the character of Audrey 2, right?
Yes, yeah, from the Four Tops.
No. When you tell me, it probably makes sense, though. It's a great voice actor.
Yes, he's amazing. So it's another character that's kind of androgynous. It has a female name and, voiced by this deep male voice. Did you ever watch Captain N?
The Game Master. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Levi Stubbs did the voice of Mother Brain.
Oh, that's right. I remember. Yeah. It's very similar.
Yeah. He was known for his work in the Four Tops. Apparently, he could have gone solo, and he didn't because he just loved being a part of the Four Tops. He's credited as Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops, which I think was important to him, that he wanted people to know the name of the band, too, even though he's the only one in it. I love the way Frank Oz shoots this movie, the shots inside Audrey 2's mouth, the shots from inside the patient's mouth where you see the dentist singing.
Oh, yeah, looking in with the nurses in the background.
There's a lot of very small things that make this movie wonderful. I adore it. Of course, it stands the test of time.
You keep saying, I love this movie, love everything about it. Could it be because you two, over the last 2 decades of falling in love, have fallen in love concurrently with this film, and it reminds you of your wife and your husband?
Maybe.
I think that we both love it, because there are things that I love, and Alan will kind of like groaned a little bit like, oh, how many times are we going to listen to this? And not that you dislike it, but in this, you're always happy to hear the soundtrack on or watch the movie again or something like that.
That's true. I think it is kind of independent, because even though I did love and adore the movie Wicked, because of our daughter playing it all the fucking time, I have hit a limit where like, okay, I don't need to hear,
Dancing Through Life.
Yeah, I could never hear Dancing Through Life again and be fine with it. If I never heard this soundtrack again, I would be very, very sad. Thank you for coming back on the show, Courtney. It's always great having you.
No, this is a fun time. Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day. I love you.
Love you too. Don't feed the plants.
Don't feed the plants. Don't feed the plants. I never do. You water the plants.
I'm coughing here. In case I interrupted you telling everyone you love for Valentine's Day. I'm so sorry. Happy Valentine's Day, Al.
James, I also hope you have a happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, Alan.
I'm not saying I love you after you were not as nice as I wanted you to be about Little Shop of Horrors. Sorry. We saw Christopher Guest for just a little bit in this movie, and next week we're going to see Waiting for Guffman, the first mockumentary that he directed. I am so excited to watch that movie. You've seen this one, James?
Yeah, I've seen it once many years ago. He also wrote this film, I believe.
Yeah. In the meantime, write to us at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Let us know how much you love Little Shop of Horrors. Let us know how much you adore every single song on the soundtrack. If you have anything even a little bit negative to say, just keep it to your damn self, okay?
We will not accept anything but total loyalty.
That is correct. And thanks to everyone who listened to 450 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
Woo! Bye, everybody.
Bye.